Welcome to the Anxious Love Coach podcast, a place for creating meaningful, conscious, secure, long-term partnerships. Here, we talk relationship anxiety and creating healthy, magnetic dynamics within partnership to help you feel confident and alive within committed partnership. My name is Natalie Kennedy, and I'm your host. I'm a relationship anxiety coach and meditation teacher. I've worked with hundreds of clients battling anxiety, and after experiencing extraordinary shifts in my own healing relative to partnership, now combine my lived personal experience and professional training to help others trust themselves within relationship and in their lives. I've been to the edge and back with my now husband from relationship anxiety and come out confidently to the other side. I want to pass the tools I've learned along to you to help you trust yourself in relationships and also create magnetic, hot dynamics with your partner. I believe lots of mainstream relationship advice today can make us anxious and dissatisfied. So let's jump in and normalize challenges that modern relationships and real people go through while also giving you tools to trust yourself, drop the shame, and alchemize your messy, twisted relational truths into profound inner wisdom and aliveness. If you haven't yet, be sure to join my communities over on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Anxious Love Coach. You can also request a 30-minute relationship anxiety assessment with me depending on availability, or ask me a question over on my website at www.anxiouslovecoach.com. I've also got a wonderful relationship anxiety meditation available to you as thanks for subscribing to my email list. Thanks for being here and enjoy this episode. Hello, welcome back to the Anxious Love Coach podcast. I'm very excited to bring on a dear friend of mine again today. If you've been a long-time listener, you know her already. It is Chelsea Joy Horton, another fellow relationship anxiety specialist over at Healing Embodied. If you haven't heard her before, she is a licensed dance movement therapist and is extremely talented. And the reason I'm having her on today is a bit unique. It's for a different reason than I usually have people on and by extension have her on. But in today's episode, if you have been a long-time listener and you've gotten a lot out of my work and or a lot out of Chelsea's work, you may have at some point experienced some healing in your journey, whether it was with relationship anxiety or just a journey with anxiety, period. And if you've ever experienced the kind of healing through this work that Chelsea and I have experienced, you may have wanted to potentially learn how to facilitate this work on your own, especially if you're a therapist or a coach or some kind of other somatic practitioner. And Chelsea will actually be hosting and creating the first program of its kind that I've seen, which is a healing embodied practitioner program. And I like to support my girls, and I think she's doing something really great. So in this episode, she and I are going to be talking about how to create a career out of anxiety work or emotions work, and how to create a career out of healing trauma in a very holistic way, one that honors both the clients that we're serving and also honors the practitioner. So I think Chelsea is leading the way in embodied business. And if that's something that you're interested in, definitely give it a listen. We're going to be talking about how to become a practitioner, some of the limitations of the clinical model of working with mental health and anxiety and things like this and trauma, and some of the pros and cons of it, and some of the pros and cons of kind of moving into a different type of model. So I hope you enjoy the episode. It's very transformative, I think, to have a conversation on the other side of the healing space, which is not just as a client, but also as a practitioner. I'm very honored to have her on today, and it's very, very special. And if I weren't so busy, I would actually join her program and become a practitioner myself. I highly endorse this. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our conversation. But before I do that, I just want to let you know a couple of things going on my end. I'm not offering any major things at the moment, but There is a sale going on for my Wizio, so if you ever want to pick my brain, you can submit a Wizio where you basically write me some paragraphs of what's going on in your life, or you can send me a voice note with some questions or looking for insight or advice, and I'll make you a 10-minute video responding to your situation. It's like my Ask Nat service. So Wizio is currently hosting a sale for Valentine's Day. It goes until February 20th. You can get 10% off by using the code LOVE2024 at checkout. And aside from that, our next Patreon call is going to be March 2nd at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Eastern. So during those calls, I always do some kind of meditation or embodiment, and then I open up for Q&A in a group setting. So if you're interested in that, I'll put both the links to the Wizio and the Patreon in the show notes. But other than that, I'm going to go shine the spotlight on my dear friend. Enjoy the episode. Hello.
Hello, hello.
How's your day? How are you doing?
I'm good. It's a snowy, chilly day here in the San Bernardino National Forest, but doing all right. How's the tropical land that you live in?
Oh, thank you for asking. There's a lot of parrots, so we're happy.
Yes, your dream
Yeah.
environment.
It's amazing. Thank you for coming on today. I'm very happy that you're here.
Thank you for
Yeah.
having me. Always, always.
Always, always. Well, for those of you that are listening, I'm very excited to have Chelsea on today. If you've ever found healing through my stuff or Chelsea stuff, chances are if you follow me, you probably follow Chelsea too at Healing Embodied. But if you don't, you should. And if you found any healing through my programs or through my podcast or through Chelsea's work, or really freedom from relationship anxiety through this philosophy, some of you might wonder, how do I get into the healing anxiety space? How do I get into this work if I want to pass on this healing to others? And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. We're going to share, um, you know, the paths that we've taken to become practitioners and the pros and cons of our different approaches. Chelsea and I have slightly different paths. And we'll talk about that. And we'll also talk about what's been great, what's been shitty, and what it takes to be a good practitioner. And at the end, I'm going to share a wonderful program that Chelsea's sharing. I'd love to talk. I want to join your program. Okay. I'm like living vicariously through all of you listeners. I am really busy, but I want to join your program. So I'm going to ask questions as if I'm going to join because chances are if I were wondering these things, you might be wondering these things. So let's talk a little bit about how we got into this work. How did you get into it, Chelsea?
Well, I started in the traditional path. I got my undergraduate degree in counseling. Then I went and got my master's degree in dance movement therapy and counseling, which is basically like a dual degree in your typical counseling psychology mixed with somatics and creative arts therapy. So I did the traditional path. I worked at a psychiatric hospital for 2 years with psychiatrists and social workers and, licensed talk therapists. So I have a lot of experience in that traditional path. And I pretty quickly learned that it was not for me. The system, the chronic burnout, compassion fatigue, being overworked and underpaid, feeling like you never have enough time to take care of yourself, as a practitioner, as a therapist, doing really intense emotional work. And I was like, I don't think this is gonna work for me anymore. I think I might like crash and burn. I don't think this is sustainable for me and the way that I work best. And I, I had talked with other people who also deviated from the traditional path. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't have to do this. I don't have this isn't the only way to support people. And that's basically how Healing Embodied was born. It was like, okay, this work, somatic work, dance movement therapy, um, like the deep inner work has impacted me so much. I know it impacts other people because I've literally worked with hundreds of other people. And, I felt into like, what was the biggest way that this work changed my life? and how could I help other people who have similar experiences? And I realized that this work helped me the most in my relationship. And so I was like, I wonder if other people out there experience similar things to what I experienced in my relationship. And lo and behold, you start talking about it on social media, and people are like, what?
You hit a bit of a gold mine.
Like, excuse me, this is a thing. Oh my God. People feel so understood and connected and seen. And you're like, okay, wow, a lot of other people suffer with this in silence. And so it felt really amazing for me to be able to take the personal and professional experience I had and to support other people through that process as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had a very similar journey. My background was all in yoga and mindfulness, and then I think I stepped into the trauma work when I met my teacher in Austria, and that was huge. And it sounds like it's similar in the sense that it's somatic. And if you're not sure as a listener what somatic means, the way I interpret it is just it's body stuff. And that was a big piece that was missing, was the emotional component of mindfulness and the sacredness and the spiritual component. And then I had my coaching background also, but that was like a nutrition coaching background. But we also learned how to have deep conversations with people. Program that I went to was very much holistic, which is fortunate because so much of health is not just what you eat, but it's not just what food you consume, but it's also everything that you consume: social media, the relationships in your life, what books you're reading, what movies you're watching, all this junk. So that was kind of when I had my relationship anxiety healing, it was the same thing. I just started sharing my stuff, and lo and behold, lots of other people. But I think as one thing I noticed, and it sounds like you're noticing it as well, is that relationship anxiety is just like one portal into the grand work, I think, of all things.
Yep.
Relationship anxiety for me was the first time I became intimately aware that I had an inner world.
Yeah.
And there's many ways to discover that you have an inner world. But for those of you that find me or Chelsea or any relationship anxiety count, this is kind of the first time you discover that there's more inside of you than you thought. And there's some beauty to that. So you mentioned a little bit about the burnout and like the therapist side of things in the clinical route. But I wonder also if there are some drawbacks, not just to the therapist, but also to the people supposedly getting help in that system. What are the downsides as a patient or as a client in that system in being part of that model? Because
Oh,
that's stuff I don't know about.
oh
I've
my
always
goodness.
been in the coaching world. I've never really gone into the therapy world.
You have just opened up Pandora's box, my friend.
That was my agenda.
I mean, when you are on the receiving end of a service from a provider, a practitioner, a therapist who is burnt out, who can hardly take care of themselves financially, emotionally, psychologically because of the nature of the work, you're not getting the fullness of their presence. You're not getting like there is this sense of feeling rushed or this sense of urgency that can happen as a client because you feel how freaking fried your therapist is, or like they've got 8 other clients to see today, or they've got to make sure they get you out on time because their next client starts the right after you, or there are so many patients being pushed through this hospital and everyone has to be seen so that you can, report to insurance that you've done your quote unquote due diligence. But really the like depth of presence and a therapist, a practitioner who can show up in their fullness and serve from overflow, it's something that is so like painfully lacking in the system. And also the sense of humanity, because a lot of therapists were trained, with the diagnostic system, the DSM, which is really something created for insurance companies to be able to bill. You're seeing everything through this lens of,
Can I interrupt you for a second? For those that don't know what the DSM is, can you tell us what that is?
It is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, and it is the Bible, quote unquote, that is full of all of the different diagnoses. So OCD, anxiety, PTSD, personality disorders, psychosis, and they all have numbers after them. And so,
Wow.
yeah,
I
so
didn't know they
you
had numbers.
so when you're in the typical system, you have to kind of see everything as what does this like what diagnosis does this person have? How can I take this person's complex array of symptoms and categorize it into one or two diagnoses so that we can bill insurance, so that they can get medication, so that they can get treatment. Because if they don't have a diagnosis, they they can't get any of that in the traditional system.
So
Yeah.
I'm guessing there are some, I mean, I'm guessing that was a system that was created that had some benefits to it. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. But I also, based on what you're saying, it sounds like there's an enormous consequences to that type of um, strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. There are benefits. I know for some people, it can be such a life-changing thing to receive a diagnosis and go, oh my gosh, this explains why I've been feeling this way. And there's a specific kind of treatment for this thing. That's incredible. And yeah, there are so many, there's also a lot of harm that can be done in the name of yeah, diagnoses and a lot of misdiagnoses. There's no tests, there's no blood tests you can take to say you have PTSD. Um, and so there's a lot of misdiagnoses because it's kind of just guesswork. Honestly, no matter how trained you are looking at a cluster of symptoms, something that a human being who's complex is experiencing, and you're looking at the DSM and going, okay, they check off 4 out of 6 of these symptoms that is under this diagnosis, so I'm going to give them this diagnosis.
Yeah, it sounds like you're making these observations, but then you have to make these interpretations too. And
Yes.
interpretations are always subjective and you're a complex human interpreting another complex human, and so a lot can get lost in translation, and there's something that you could always miss that might throw off the diagnosis. So therapists and practitioners, including ourselves, are flawed. And so I think when I have a lot of clients that come to me with the OCD diagnosis, and what I say to them is, okay, if you're going to be working from the lens of the diagnosis, you should probably work with someone who works with OCD or with the diagnosis, because first of all, I'm not qualified to do that. I have no licensed training to do that. So while you're with me, you are a human. When you're at the doctor, you can have the diagnosis. With me, I don't have any, I can't speak to that. So there's that limitation of it can almost become an identity. And
Yes.
as there are consequences to any type of identifying with anything, it has pros and cons, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Pros and cons.
So, in what way has the work that you've been doing been different from the work that you were doing back in the day?
Well, first of all, I've been able to anchor into my own philosophy versus what the system requires of me. So my own philosophy being like human first when it comes to me. I'm a human with limited capacity. I cannot be endlessly compassionate. I cannot endlessly give of myself. I cannot endlessly hold space. I have limits because I'm a human who needs to sleep, who needs to rest, who needs to take care of herself, just like any of my clients. So, human first, body first, when it comes to me as the practitioner, and also human first, body first when it comes to the client, and trusting the client's body's pace of things versus you have this diagnosis, we need to follow this treatment plan, and insurance is only giving you 5 sessions covered, so we need to get through this within those 5 sessions in order to say we had a successful treatment plan. So I trust your body's pace, and I'm going to always follow the lead of your body in sessions versus I need to check these particular things that have to happen within a session. There's this deep, deep trust of the human experience, of the human body. That is the foundation that leads, everything else falls after that.
What I'm hearing is just so much room for humanness to happen on both ends in this kind of new way of doing therapy. And I really appreciate that because I remember so my beloved teacher in Austria, her name is Steffi. And I remember the first time after I had worked with her for a few weeks in Austria, I continued to work with her online. And I remember the first time I paid her for a session, and all of a sudden the 60-minute mark was happening. And I was like, okay, well, we got to wrap it up, even though I'm in the middle of a trauma response right now. And she was like, no, you have time to keep going. And for me, realizing that she had created enough space in her life to go over on a session and wait for me to finish having my meltdown. And all of us, it's just the generosity was so healing for me. Um, and it made me not want to take advantage of her time, but I was just so grateful. And the reason she's able to do that is because she's created enough space in her life as a human to be able to be generous as a teacher, as a facilitator. And ever since then, ever since I realized just how healing it is to be with a generous practitioner, I've started being more intentional about how much work I take on, because when I have a lot of space in my schedule, I'm able to be so much more generous. And I don't even follow the own rules that I have people sign. I have them sign these agreements of like, yeah, we're going to end at 60 minutes, but sometimes I'll go 90 minutes over or 90 minutes and it's fine. And I've noticed just that's the kind of world I want to live in. Not, oh, I don't care that you're in the middle of a trauma response. 55 minutes, get out, and that's the downside of working with quantity.
Yes.
So, you're working with quantity. And also I'm not a therapist, but I've read a lot of books that therapists read. And I understand a lot of the reasons that certain boundaries and agreements exist. Makes total sense. But I mean, one of the things I found very interesting, and I understand why it's put in place, it also is um, I think therapists, the licensed therapist model, CBT model, maybe, or others, there's almost a detachment that the therapist has to maintain. Like,
Yes.
no, none of your personal life can go in there. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct.
Which makes sense because it's like you're providing an objective, unbiased space. I get that. That's really important. But I also know that a lot of the times my clients are coming to me because they actually want to hear my stories. They actually want to see my messiness and they feel they relate to me. And so, okay, maybe it's a little unethical, but sometimes when I share a story, my clients say, thank you so much for sharing that story. I relate to that. I feel seen. And I think that what I'm hearing you describing is there's just so much more room for you to exist outside of the therapist role.
Yes. Yes. That is such an important thing for me to show that I'm human. And yes, like using discretion, there's nuance when it comes to sharing something about my personal self. I want it to be relevant to what I'm working on with the client
Right. You
and
can't
for it to
just
serve
jump, you can't just
yeah, I'm
jump on
not
them.
dumping something that I'm in the middle of processing, right? Like it's for an intentional purpose. And yes, a lot of therapy trainings and philosophies is like you are this blank slate. That's something you hear a lot. You are the blank slate. You are the blank slate. You are the blank slate. Um, and I realized I'm like, I don't want to be a blank slate. I want
Mm.
I want the things that are unique to me as a human being to shine through because those are actually part of the healing process for someone. Like the quirks that I have, the way that I do things, the color and the flavor that I put into something is important because for another human being to see another human being and to feel loved and held by another real human being versus a blank slate is one of the biggest agents of change and healing for a human being to show you how vulnerable they are and to share something with you that they have felt so ashamed of, and for them to know that you're a human being too, because you've shown them, and for you to go, I love you, for you to go, oh my goodness, like there's nothing wrong with you, or of course you feel that way, or that makes sense, or I've felt that way too. That is one of the most unshaming things that you can bring to someone. And a lot of times this blank slate, distant, removed role perpetuates the shame. It's, I'm on this pedestal and I'm here to fix you, diagnose you. You're coming to me with your problems and I'm the one who knows how to fix them. Versus I am a human being here to hold optimal space for you to meet your own strength, for you to learn how to trust yourself, for you to learn that you're not broken. It's a totally different paradigm, totally different.
Yeah. As you're sharing, my eyes are tearing up a little bit, and it's actually very healing for me to hear this because um, it just reminds me of how important the work is that we're doing. And there's so much room for new ways of relating. And I don't know, I'm just imagining, even if you are listening and you're not interested in becoming a practitioner, a therapist, it's so powerful to understand why you connect to certain practitioners and not others. So even if you don't plan on becoming a practitioner, I hope that as you're listening, you're hearing like what it is that makes something a healing space versus what isn't.
Yeah. And these are the things that aren't explicitly taught.
No.
Most trainings are like, here's how you do the modality. Here's how you do the CBT. Here's how you do the dance therapy. Like, here's the philosophy. Here's the techniques. But the things that aren't explicitly taught is how to be so deeply present with someone, how to hold such a transformative, compassionate, shame-free space that just radiates from your energy, that you don't even really have to say anything, but it's felt. Like that is not something that you can take a standardized test on,
No.
but it's the most important thing
Right.
that needs to be present.
And this also explains why, a few years ago I was really hung up on my credentials. And now I'm not because I understand that ingredient that you're describing, because there are therapists that are missing the ingredient, and there are people with zero credentials whatsoever that do have that ingredient. And it's that ingredient that makes it. It's the degree of presence.
Mhm.
The credentials and the training is important,
Yeah,
always. And it's not the only thing that matters.
yeah, it's not the only thing. And also understanding that that presence, that degree of presence that a practitioner brings in order to create that kind of space has to be fiercely protected,
Yeah. Oh, thank you for saying that.
has to be fiercely protected.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
In order to be able to bring that level of presence to a human being for a whole hour or 90 minutes while they are sharing something that is so tender and vulnerable, and you as the practitioner, you're being simultaneously present while doing all your skills, looking for the patterns, helping to reflect, helping them to process somatically. Like you're doing the skills, but to have that level of presence as the foundation for that whole hour, people don't actually understand how much that takes. An entire hour of uninterrupted fullness of presence.
It's like a full-on meditation.
It is not an easy thing to do, and
Yeah.
it is not an easy thing to maintain and to bring forth when you are exhausted, when you're burnt out, when you're not caring for yourself, when you're stressed about your bills because you can't make enough money because you
When you're
insurance,
resentful, that's a big
when you're
one.
resentful, yeah, like
Mhm.
when you're overworked, when you're doing work that doesn't light you up. Like there are so many things that have to be in place in order to create the internal environment for the practitioner to bring this depth of presence.
Mhm.
It has to be nurtured and nourished. It's
It's
not a they
kind of
have it or
like
they don't. Yeah.
It's kind of like nature, when you go out
Yes.
into nature, and nature is one of the most healing presences on planet Earth. And if we destroy it, it will not have the same effect on us.
Has to
You
be
are the
protected.
nature. And
Yeah. I mean, we are nature, and to like be able to anchor into that part of yourself, your ever-present nature, this timeless spaciousness. Sorry, do you hear snowplows coming by?
I do not. Your AI background noise remover must be working very well.
Amazing, because they're very loud. Um, but to bring this like timeless, boundless spaciousness is really what feels so healing about nature. When you go in nature, there is no time. It's you feel the like ever presence of all that has been. And that has to be fiercely protected, whether
Yeah.
it's in a tree or in a human being. It's really easy to lose access to that because of all the distractions, our own emotional pain, stress, the burdens of just existing on this planet. It's it takes a lot to maintain and protect that.
Yeah, it's very intentional. You have to set up a very intentional lifestyle for yourself in order to be a practitioner with that level of hmm, intention and presence. Um, yeah. And your bills need to be comfortably paid. It's very difficult to be grounded when you're barely making it, you know.
Exactly.
I definitely
Exactly.
found this, I find this to be, as someone that came from the yoga industry, I also was the top private yoga teacher in Orange County before COVID. And my yoga business. Yeah, like I was number one on Yelp for private yoga. I was a solid entrepreneur, and I still wasn't making enough to save for anything. It was just, I broke even. So if I'm the top yoga practitioner in Orange County of all places, if I'm the top one and I am just breaking even, what does that tell you about the other yoga practitioners? That they're not able to survive off of that. And what kind of, safety are you going to be able to have in your nervous system in a healing space that is so sacred? So ultimately, I think as a practitioner, you are a space holder, and the space inside you needs to feel safe in order for you to be able to offer that to someone else.
And there's a lot of guilt that practitioners come up against when it comes to making themselves actually the number one priority. Because they go,
Yeah.
that's selfish, versus I do this in order to protect that energy, which actually is the most beneficial thing that I provide for my clients. So I
Right.
actually serve others best when I am serving from overflow, when I am nourished, when I set up a lifestyle that is so intentional that supports my own nervous system safety and abundance. But there's
Yeah.
so much internalized guilt that also the system perpetuates of you don't go into this for the money.
Oh, yeah.
I
How
I
dare
was
you? How
I
dare
was
you want
told
to pay your
that.
bills?
I'm like, okay, I'm paying $60,000 for grad school, but I'm not what why? I have to pay
Right.
continuing fees to obtain my certification every single year. I have to pay for continuing education units. But I'm not supposed to make money, but I have to keep paying to be able to do what I'm doing.
It's so backwards. And I think it's worth noting like where in the world you live too, because we moved somewhere cheaper in the world so that the treadmill runs a bit slower for me in terms of expenses. If you live somewhere like downtown Los Angeles, you're the amount of money you're going to have coming in order to have that level of spaciousness inside is going to be much higher. You'll have to protect your situation much more intensely than, say, someone living where the cost of living is a third. Then maybe you can, especially if you're working online, then you can afford to do something else. But it's something worth taking into consideration. We're supposed to act like We live as no
In a
like
vacuum.
yeah, we live in a vacuum, and you shouldn't want any money, but you still have to pay all your bills in Los Angeles. But don't act like you need to pay your bills. Act like that those bills don't matter to you at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was always a real point of contention when I was in the yoga industry too. Same thing.
Yeah.
You don't teach yoga for the money.
But it's like
But if you
those of
want to
us,
be successful, you need to market yourself, which means you need to do this full time.
and of course, these standards are mostly geared towards women. So let's not forget that too. Like
That's true.
who tells a man that they don't go into something for the money? Like they're allowed to want
Girl.
the career
Oh my
success.
God.
Okay. Okay. It's another podcast episode. All right. Um,
Women, you are not allowed to want money.
um,
Yeah.
I was
Oh,
so
and if you do want money, then you're not allowed to want money, but you should still make money. And you should do it. It should happen to you naturally because of how much you care. You should
yes,
accidentally make a lot of money as a result of caring so much.
yes, you're
Then
caring.
the money will come to you when you don't need it anymore.
Yes, you tell your landlord, did you see how much I cared about people this month? Rent paid, excuse me. Um,
Yeah.
it's it is there's just so much there's so much that the system perpetuates that then make it difficult for a practitioner to boldly and confidently be able to protect that energy because they have the guilt, they have the shame, they have the martyrdom, they have the people pleasing. And those things are going to hinder your ability to go, this thing that I do, this energy is sacred and I protect it at all costs.
Mhm.
Not in this like vicious, malicious way, but like you really you honor and revere yourself as a human being. You honor and revere your body so much that you work through your people pleasing and your martyrdom and your guilt and your shame because you know that those things are choking out your ability to be the most effective practitioner that you could be and to be able to hold space for the depth and complexity of human emotion.
Yeah, that makes sense. So there's a thought coming up, and I know it already brings up a little squeamish sensation in my chest because there is the whole thing on capitalism. And I don't think there's a right or wrong to this, but I just want to at least touch on this point in that what you're describing is infinitely priceless. You can't put a price on presence. There's something so healing about it. And so it must be fiercely protected financially, spiritually, emotionally. If you run a big business and you have a lot of followers, there's going to be a lot of people wanting help from you. And so you can't, unfortunately, as one human, serve all of them at once in the same way, to the same degree. And as much as you and I and all practitioners wish that we had unlimited, I mean, we do have unlimited time in this universe. Time is an illusion. But anyway, what I mean is like it's it costs more to work with this kind of practitioner.
Yes.
And it's really sad that for most people, it's out of their budget to get that level of support. Most people can only afford insurance company based stuff where most people can only afford a burnt out therapist. That's the reality. And I want to acknowledge that. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that because I've thought about it a lot. Most of the world can only afford a burnt out therapist, if that. And so, how do these people, first of all, how can those people find healing? And second of all, what can a practitioner do knowing
Yeah.
this,
Oh yeah, this is something that I have.
considering there's just one person, and you have
Yeah,
24
something
hours a day and half of them are sleeping?
right.
Yeah.
Something I've wrestled with so much since starting my business. And the first thing I had to come to realize was I'm not the gatekeeper to healing. When people say,
Hmm.
how dare you charge this much? I need your help. There is this belief that I hold something, like I'm holding something behind a gate that no one else has access to. That like
Hmm.
I am the author of all
It's actually very
healing.
flattering. It's very flattering that you think I'm so
Right,
special.
like, oh, you think I'm that special? Right? Like I am just a human, like going back to the human first. I am just a human who has set my life up in this way, embodied these skills in such a way that I can hold an optimal space for you. But I am in no way the gatekeeper or the author of healing. Like healing can be found anywhere. Healing can be found in nature. Like the human body and spirit is designed to heal. You get a cut, you don't have to tell your body how to heal. So it is inherent to us to evolve and to heal. So I just want to say that like practitioners are not the gatekeepers of healing. And we know that having support can be so life-changing, can make that healing process feel a lot less lonely, feel a lot smoother. And so there's a difference between capitalism and corrupt capitalism. Corrupt capitalism says dollar first, profit first, human all the way at the bottom of the totem pole. Employees, bottom of the totem pole. Client experience, bottom of the totem pole. Profit first. The way I exist in a capitalistic system, I live in America, king capitalism. I exist, I have to exist in capitalism, unfortunately. But for me, it is so wildly important that my principles and philosophy of human first exist within my capitalist business, if you will. So my employees, I do not make the most that I can make because I want my employees to be generously compensated so that they're not stressed about their income. They're not working 40 hours a week. Full-time at Healing Embodied is like 20, 30 at max, because I also understand you can't work 40 hours a week and do this work for 40 hours a week. You can't. You just can't. So my employees are paid well. They get generous amounts of flexibility in their schedule. So just the business system itself, when it comes to me, when it comes to my employees, when it comes to the way that we treat our clients, is human first. So even though it's a capitalist business, it's human first. My ultimate dream and goal is to have so much overflow that I'm able to offer scholarships, create things that are lower cost. Like, yes, I am one person and therefore I can only see so many people. And if I am compensated accordingly, and I do not have a corrupt capitalist business where it's profit first, I want to serve from overflow. I want to create things that are going to impact the world around me in a positive way. And so even if you can't get direct access to that practitioner that is out of your budget, that you're like putting on a pedestal or whatever, know that when practitioners serve in this way, it starts to impact the world around them. And you might not get a direct impact by being in session with them, but it starts to change the environment around them. It starts to change the system around them. My clients, like I have this client who is a lawyer. She works with me. She's so impacted by the work that she starts to change the culture of her work. She implemented this program at work where they have a playroom, a creative playroom for lawyers to go and to like recoup, to take care of themselves. The way she trains her other staff is so compassionate and loving and caring versus the typical cutthroat. So just like the infinite ripple effect.
Chills. I have chills.
When you are fiercely protecting that presence, it is not just about you. It is not just about who you directly work with, who can afford that. The impact when someone is in their full presence and every person that they involve with and everything that they do is embedded with that love, that presence, and this philosophy of human first.
Mm. That sounds really yummy.
Imagine if capitalism didn't have a bunch of money hoarding billionaires wanting all the profits and like paying their staff shit. Like the reason why we're in this mess is greed and corruption, but we're on a whole other podcast here. Anyway.
Right. Yep. Yep.
So
there are practitioners out there that want to make enough money and be well and still take care of their clients.
Yes. Yes. But we
and
can't
whoever
give
comes
to
into their
everyone.
space.
We can't give to everyone if we can barely pay our bills and our staff. So like it has to come from overflow versus martyrdom and obligation.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So, for those of you listening, Chelsea is running the first of its kind out of anybody I've seen in this niche, because those of us doing this work are doing it from experience. We're doing it from uh, trainings that were not directly related to our niche, that we just like gathered our coaching training and applied it to relationship anxiety, gathered our IFS training and directed it into relationship anxiety. Obviously, this work that you're sharing is not limited to relationship anxiety, but that's the niche that I speak with. And so, but anyway, I I am in absolute awe of you, Chelsea, for doing what needs to be done to shift the space of healing and making it available for people who don't necessarily want to, or dare I say, have to go the traditional route. There are other ways to support other people in their healing. And so you have a healing embodied practitioner program coming up. I remember when we were talking about this, like literally 2 years ago. Um, yeah. So you said it, you probably wrote it down somewhere, and now it's manifesting into the 3D reality. Congratulations on it. I'm just really stoked for you, and I'm really proud to be your friend. And I would love it if you told our listeners what it is you're creating.
Why am I tearing up over here?
I'm tearing up too. I'm so proud.
Ew. Ugh. This year-long practitioner training program, I it's one of those things I'm like, oh, this is what I was put on this planet to do. Like I love
Mhm.
my relationship anxiety work, but that's just such a small manifestation or a doorway, like we said. Like, but this deeper work of training other practitioners to hold the most transformative space for other people, whether that's people with anxiety, uh, on other entrepreneurs, like, you know,
Shame.
the possibilities are endless. But we created an accredited year-long certification program for people who want to hold space for other people in a really ethical, powerful, effective way,
Abundant.
abundant, where it's like, we're going to be training you in all these things about your identity, um, your boundaries, the way you see yourself as a human, as a practitioner, and how that impacts your work with clients. But, you know, over the course of this year, we're going to be training our students in trauma work, embodiment work, creative expression, like how to use creative expression to help process emotions, shadow work. We're going to be bringing in some existential kink as part of our curriculum. Parts work and IFS. This is on our required reading list.
Oh,
No bad.
I love that book so much.
Parts
Yeah.
work, inner child work. And in this program, we're the whole last month of the program is how to craft and create your dream career, which is not something that I didn't learn in my $60,000 master's degree. It's like, actually, how do you create your dream career versus go apply for jobs? Like, how do you become the creator of your dream career? Because the possibilities are truly limitless. And a lot of times the system just kind of, they give you one option. You're going to get this degree and you're going to go get a job versus what lights you the fuck up? And how can you make that something that you do every day? So it's not just learning how to be a practitioner, but how to make this into a career, how to be a human who leads from their own embodiment and their own overflow versus I just learned these skills that I can. It's all so integrated, and I'm, you know, graduates of this program will be certified through the Complementary Therapist Accreditation Association. You can have letters after your name if you do like to have letters. I love me some letters. I've got lots of letters after my name. And through the Complementary Therapist Accreditation Association, you can get insurance through them so that you can insure your practice. That doesn't mean like people can pay with insurance because, I mean, if you know about the bureaucratic insurance system, they don't really cover alternative stuff. But you as a practitioner can be insured in your practice, which, yeah, feels really, really, really cool to be able to offer a certification program that has a code of ethics and these things in place, but is still very true to our straying away from the traditional system in our training.
Oh, so good. That's so awesome. And I'm sure the people participating or the practitioners in training are going to be so grateful to have like that system set up. Because when I was starting, I was like, am I a coach? Am I a yoga teacher? I kind of had to find my own insurance. And I had to ask around so much. So I do have insurance, but I'm like, it's complicated. So I think this is a really good place to go where it's like set up for you almost.
Yeah, and it's an international certification for it as well.
Oh, that's so good. So good.
Yeah, so we have a student in New Zealand, we have people applying from the UK, of course we have US students, but a lot of these trainings and traditional paths, it's like very limited to whatever state you're in or whatever country you're in. So it's awesome that we can offer an international certification. And
You
we
guys,
start
you're gonna see me in one of these years. You will find me 1 year in Chelsea's program. Hi. Yeah.
Yeah, our first cohort starts April 1st. We have the application deadline is February 20th. So yeah, reach out to me if you're interested. We already have the dates set for our 2025 cohort as well. Where this is not a one-time thing. I will be doing this forever and ever and ever and always. So
Oh, I have this like ache in my chest, and it's the ache of truth. I don't know if you know that. I don't know if you know that feeling. It's the ache of like, yes, it's the ache of truth. Like this is where it's at. There is magic happening in this call and in this woman's life. And you are radiating light that will attract so much abundance. And I'm just so grateful that you're putting this out there. I know how scary it must be. I know that you're excited about this, and you have so many letters after your name and are completely, absolutely qualified, beyond qualified to be doing what you're doing. And I know it's probably really scary. So I takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing. And I think it's beautiful. And anyone who works with you would be very lucky to be in your hands.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
I
this has
love
been
you.
the wildest adventure. I love you so much.
I love you too. All right. Well, you'll send me the info so that I'll put this all in the show notes if you want to apply for Chelsea's Healing Embodied Practitioner Program. And
let me know if Natalie sent you. Let me know if you heard about this from
yes,
podcast.
Yes,
let me know.
Yes, please. It's been my pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Toodaloo.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks so much for listening to The Anxious Love Coach today. If you loved this episode, please hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and maybe share it with someone that you believe might benefit from these perspectives. Please also subscribe to my email list at www.anxiouslovecoach.com, as I'm trying to reduce my reliance on social media. In exchange, you will receive my free relationship anxiety meditation and more supportive tools sent your way. If you would like to work with me, head on over to my website at, again, anxiouslovecoach.com to explore different tiers of coaching options and online programs. Thanks again for listening, and catch you in the next episode. Have a blessed day.